With the release of the PS4 Pro and the upcoming release of the Xbox One X, there has of course been a lot of speculation and discussion surrounding the future of the console industry, and that maybe we could be seeing the end of the traditional console generation life cycle. This is of course the first generation where we have seen a mid-gen upgrade for both systems, and has led to a lot of talk that perhaps we're going to be seeing this sort of thing more often. And there's even been talk of the fact that companies could be considering a more mobile phone style of release where we get a new unit every couple of years. My name is Amata, and in this Red Gaming Tech video we're going to discuss some comments from on this very same topic from one Albert Penello. And I also have some other comments about the Xbox One X to throw in as well. Now, of course, Albert Penello is the Xbox Senior Director of Product Management, and he spoke with Wired in an interview not too long ago. And here's what he had to say, quote, "We had to think really hard because obviously I didn't know the PS4 Pro existed when the team got together and started conceiving of Xbox One X, but I know we thought about it. We're on 8 console generations since 1977, or we can go back further to 74 when the Magnavox Odyssey came out, and it's always worked one way. We're introducing a new way, and we have to really think up through every part, from the developer to the customer to naming, messaging, and how we tell the story, and make sure we respect what's awesome about consoles when we address this idea. As well, I'll talk about things like the ports on the back of the box. It's a silly point, but it's a testament to how much care we put in. All the ports are in the same place on the X as on an S, and use the same cables, so if you're going to upgrade, you just reach in back, swap cables, and I've upgraded. We're not doing different packages or names, and we didn't do a new controller. Those were all very thoughtful things about trying to ease customers into this new idea. I don't want to break consoles. I love console gaming, and I don't want to go into a new console system every year either. I don't think anybody wants that, but who knows what kind of new technologies people are going to think up." Now, this very much falls in line with some recent comments from Sony's Sean Layden, who spoke to the German website golem.de, who did say that they are indeed planning a PlayStation 5 instead of going for the smartphone upgrade model. So it could just be that we may see shorter console life cycles. I mean, the Xbox 360 and PS3 had very, very long life cycles. They were actually outside of the norm, as I've said many times now. It's actually that normal to have a console generation that long. Normally it's about 5 years, 6 years, whatever, rather than the 8 to 10 that we had with the most recent previous generation. So it could just be that we're going back to the shorter life cycle, or we could just be, instead of the every year we get a new console, like in smartphones, we get a mid-generation upgrade each time. Now, I don't know if they're going to make a habit out of doing a mid-generation upgrades or not. It's hard to say. I think they're fully aware that if they do this too much, people are going to get just very annoyed and tired with the idea of buying, £400 box to know that in a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, whatever it happens to be, they're going to have to buy another one and then go through it all again with the next one, which may or may not have backwards compatibility with their previous library. So I don't know if they're going to do this every generation. I think it comes down to a couple of things, and one of them is, to be frank, the specifications of the consoles on release. The Xbox One X obviously is going to last a lot longer in terms of its specs than the Xbox One did, because, well, both the PS4 vanilla and the Xbox One vanilla were both underpowered when they came out in comparison to what PCs were capable of at the time. And obviously they've continued to be so with new hardware like, Ryzen and all sorts of other graphics cards coming out, and CPUs and all that sort of stuff. PC gaming is obviously more expensive, but you get my point. In terms of power, PC has always been in the lead, and obviously the consoles were getting left further and further behind as PC gaming obviously moved forward, and the consoles, well, they are what they are. And that's obviously why one of the reasons why at least we've seen mid-generation upgrades, because, the hardware needs to be sort of keeping up a little bit and bringing a little bit of extra power to the table for developers to use, and obviously to improve the experience for gamers. So I think, let's say for example the PlayStation 5 comes out and it's more powerful than the Xbox One X, just for example, that will probably last a bit longer at the time. Obviously, we don't have no way of knowing when the PS5 is going to come out. I think even next year would be too soon. It's probably going to be a couple of years, I think, before we see another console from Sony or Microsoft. But let's just say it's around that sort of power. That's probably going to last a bit longer than the PS4 Vanilla did, and the PS4 Pro as well. But obviously this is all pure speculation, and speaking of specifications and all that sort of stuff, the developers by the name of Piranha Bytes also had a couple of things to say regarding the power of the Xbox One X, and of course how much it costs. There was a lot of talk about how much it could cost before we knew it was going to cost $499. Various comments from Michael Pachter, he said it wouldn't be above $400. Obviously he was wrong, but they had to say, quote, well, it's cheap for what's inside. The big question is whether people are really going to pay that much, and if the PS4 Pro goes under $350, it could become a huge problem. Hardware-wise, the Xbox One X is a very nice machine, no doubt. And while his comments are concise, I do think they're worth bringing up, as I think they're fairly on point. I have no doubt that Sony have a price cut plan for the PS4 Pro right around the release of the Xbox One X. I will be shocked if we don't see one, to be honest, because Sony know that the Xbox One X is more powerful than their machine by a fairly large margin, and obviously the way to beat that is, hey, this machine is way cheaper. Here are some cheap bundles of some really good games. Go for it, basically. So I think Sony is going to underprice Microsoft hard on this. And I think Microsoft know that. They're not stupid. They are fully aware that Sony are going to be doing this, and they're going to have to come out with a really strong launch lineup, because as I've said many times, and as everyone ever has said many times, you can have the most powerful PC, console, whatever in the world, but if it doesn't have any games, it's just an expensive paperweight at the end of the day. And we saw a lot of games coming out on the Xbox One X at E3, but obviously we don't know how many are going to be launch. How many are going to be system sellers? We don't know the full day one launch lineup yet. We know some, of course, but Microsoft knows that to really shift this machine, they're going to have some big budget, big ticket names next to that Xbox One X box. Whatever those games happens to be is irrelevant. But that's really what it's going to come down to, is the launch lineup. Consoles don't have the best history when it comes to launch lineups, but obviously given that this is a mid-generation upgrade, I think it's going to be a bit alleviated in that regard, because obviously developers already know the tech. Obviously this is more powerful, but they know the architecture, that sort of thing, and obviously they've had a long time to be prepared for this upgrade. And obviously a lot of games that are on this machine have been in development for a while. It's obviously just been a new addition. It's essentially getting the PC versions of a lot of games, I would assume. So yeah, I think it's definitely going to be an interesting battle come Christmas. I think the MPD reports around November and December, and possibly even into January and February, are going to be really, really interesting. I think Microsoft know that they're not going to sell as many Xbox One X's as they have Xbox One S's, just for example, because it's expensive, and obviously that means less people are going to be able to afford it. And to be frank, I think the naming is definitely going to confuse people. It just seems ripe for the confused grandma in the game store or whatever to be like, oh, that's what you wanted, isn't it? When obviously they wanted the X or the S or whatever. So there are definitely concerns, and obviously Microsoft have to get it definitely just right. I'm not saying, Sony prices them low and then they win, because obviously life is more complicated than that. It's not quite so cut and dry. But I think it's definitely going to be a close fight between the two. And it is going to be very interesting to see the future of console gaming and how it actually morphs and changes as we kind of adjust to this brand new mid-generation life cycle that we've had this generation. With all that said, that's me done for this video. The link to the Wired interview is in the description below this video. If you wish to give it a read, I suggest you do so. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Your support is always appreciated. If you would mind, take a look at our Patreon over at patreon.com/redgamingtech. If you can't support us or don't want to, that's absolutely fine. But if you would at least take a look, that would be highly appreciated. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys next time.